Hi everyone. If you're seeing me on video, it's because I'm in the middle of Ngarrindjeri country, which is the Kimberley in Northwest Australia, and I'm out of range. So apologies for that. Um, I just wanted to start talking about our contribution to Southern Anthropocenes and to thank Casper for his work putting together this beautiful volume. Not only the volume, but also the launching meetings that he's been having. I popped into the one that was at the ANU last month, and I'm impressed by the way in which the launching events in themselves are a kind of Southern Anthropocene networking process that underscores the importance of linking all our little stories together in order to create a kind of, well, a grander narrative. Of course, the grander narrative was critiqued by Lyotard last century, but this century we've seen um, a rise in the importance of reclaiming the notion of a grand narrative. It's kind of the elements are sitting there waiting to be put together. It's so clear that the polycrisis that's climate change and all the associated effects is in itself the basis for a really important story that we are nonetheless having trouble um, getting traction, getting the power to really push back against the usual business as usual stories about progress, technological modernization, technological solutions, etc., etc., etc. So we're with our little stories, we're reasserting our connection to territory, to place, and that's precisely what Jennifer Eadie and I have done with our chapter on reclaiming Aboriginal walking trails as method. The story about the particular trail that we're walking and writing at the same time, is a fascinating one in that it was a trail that was started by an old man who was my teacher again in the Kimberley region of Northwest Australia, Paddy Rowe, in the late 80s, tried to devise a method for looking after his country, trying to continue to look after his country in the way that his people had been for millennia. With the crisis that his people faced, an existential crisis of colonization, extraction capitalism, rampant racism, and disregard for Indigenous people, he was really worried about what was going to happen to country. Why is country so important? Because it's not a resource to be exploited. It's not something that is to be built on, to be dug up, to be turned into mines or even tourism ventures. It's it's a living thing, he always said. Country is alive, and this is in tune with his animist philosophy. Anyway, story goes, I was supposed to write a book with him about this country, and I neglected to write it. I had a family to bring up. I was a long way away. He decided to do something more interesting and more effective, which is to start a walking trail which would invite, well, anybody to come and walk 8, 9 days up the beach from Broome, camping along the way and being led. This is the important thing, being led initially by him and then later by other members of his family and extended family. Everything changes in your relationship to Australia and its territories when the authority is invested in the Indigenous people who have the knowledge, who know all about it, whose knowledge is passed on through many, many generations. And so the Lurridjari Heritage Trail was a great success, and it did have the effect of protecting country um, when a crisis emerged, which was a multinational energy company called Woodside wanted to build a huge liquefied natural gas plant on the beach in the middle of this trail, in a place where there were nobody was living, and this would have excuse me, this would have been a disaster for the environment, and not to mention the extended environment with the extraction of this natural gas. People who'd been on the trail with Paddy Rowe or with others and took the time to walk. The pacing is important, not to be in a hurry, took the time to walk and learn about this country, had their minds and their hearts opened to the possibility of living differently in Australia. When they heard about this crisis with Woodside, they came back to help. They came back to help as lawyers, media people, artists. People made films, or they were just activists who mounted actions disrupting the industrialization program. Yeah, so that's the story about the Lurridgerry Heritage Trail, and that was over 30 years ago, and it's still going. You can go on it in June or July or August every year out of Bruun and learn a lot. The piece that Jennifer and I wrote extends on, kind of philosophizes a little bit about the importance of walking and its relationship to knowing. The famous anthropologist Deborah Bird Rose referred to it as footwalk epistemology, the kind of things you can know only by walking. Yeah, so I might leave it there and hand over to Jen Eadie to add her 5 minutes to mine. And yeah, so thanks for listening. And I'm sorry once again that I wasn't there to take questions and link up with the other participants. Okay, bye for now.
Hi, Jennifer here. I also would like to take this opportunity to apologize for not being there in person, and also take the chance to thank Casper for creating this incredible book. I feel really lucky to be a part of it. All right, so today I'm zooming in from Ghana country, which is in South Australia. For the reflection, I wanted to pick up on a comment made by Marisol de la Cadena in the introduction to the section that our chapter is in. And she writes, sorry, I quote, thinking ecologically from contact zones transforms the way we tend to think of place and invites notions of territory that extend beyond the mappable. And so this made me wonder, what does the act of walking the Lurridgerry Trail, as it weaves its way through and also co-creates contact zones, offer as a means for thinking through this proposal by Cadena? During the walk, we move in and out of various kinds of territory, but here I'm understanding mappable territory quite specifically as that which is produced and restricted by what Stephen has just referred to now as the narrative of business as usual, that being business of land as property, land as commodity, land as resource to be extracted or developed, and so forth. So, in our essay, we offer an antidote from the third day of the trail. It's the experience of being instructed by the Gularabaloo trail leaders, Daniel and Errol Rowe, on how to not look but listen for native beehives, and then how to collect their honey. All of this taking place in a paperbark forest in an area called Willie Creek. So as we walk through the grove, maybe after 30 minutes or so, someone yells out, I can hear a humming. It is as if our humming is a conversation with the hummings of the world at large, writes Michael Tussing. What is noticeable here is the stirring up of what constitutes territory. The visitors thought they were in a paperbark forest, or rather, they thought they knew perhaps even what constitutes a paperbark tree, but instead, they find themselves bearing witness and also participating in what Deborah Bird Rose calls a shimmer, that which, I quote, emerges in the relationship and encounter, end quote. Within this encounter, the shimmer does not simply come about from the discovery of the beehive after walking and listening for hummings, or in the taste of the honey. Where the shimmer emerges from is in particular from being allowed to be part of an infrastructure of kinship. So now, with this in hand, I want to take a few steps back and go to the first day of the trail. So the trail begins under Paddy Rowe's old office, which is a huge tamarind tree in the middle of Bruun Township. Here, Daniel Rowe and his family welcome the trail walkers, as they have for over 30 years now, to Gularabaloo country and to the trail itself. The ceremony gently welcomes people to this place, but in particular, the welcome is a practice which puts responsibility into the hands of the individual being welcomed. There is diplomacy at work here. The visitor is being asked to remember that the relationship with the land and the localized knowledge here is just that, one of a visitor. And so, having been welcomed under the tamarind tree, the group of roughly 40 people sets off. Initially, we are walking through the streets on hot bitumen road, past houses, past school kids, and then finally we're walking along a path which borders Old Broome Cemetery. Here we encounter flowering jiggle trees with soft green leaves and incredibly vibrant red flowers. Daniel explains that the leaves represent the relationship that one has with their mother-in-law. The leaves and the know-how here are not separate. This is the first lesson the walkers are hearing and being taught. And so what does this encounter of cultural story do with this rigid street path and the beautiful trees that line it? The trees are no longer simply tree, but in fact storytellers, clarifying and expressing what constitutes relational infrastructure. And what does this story do to the narrative which had assigned this zone as only for gravestones, only for the dead, and only for those visiting them? And what about all the walkers who are indeed mother-in-laws or son-in-laws? How does this impact them? What do they take away? For one, we begin to notice that the walk is not following the lines of Bruun Township, but rather the lines of the walk are following the knowledge sharing capacity of trees nonetheless, tamarind, jiggle and paperbark. And yes, of course, it could be argued that these trees are mappable, but the story they carry and give force to is not. It remains continuously too dynamic and too complex and too relational, as Deborah Bird-Rose reminds us, for that business as usual to contain it. In this way, the walking establishes its own moving territory, which is upheld by the sharing of this story of Gularabaloo seaside culture. So, mappable and unmappable, continuously in tension, coexisting as we walk through these human and non-human contact zones, which reveal themselves and assert immense agency in each encounter. The articulation here is always a localized one, and it is a process that is suggestive of what it might mean to give oneself over to a situation, and to consider how one might move with affect, and most definitely move ethically within multiple worlds. A new relational space is established, one that is held and upheld collectively, simply via the act of walking together. Thank you.